"You look lost, sweetheart. The service entrance is around back." The words arrived before Marcella Dunbar could finish stepping out of her rental car. A man in a black polo shirt stood at the wrought iron gate of Bellehaven Estate, one hand resting on his belt, the other pointing toward a gravel path that curved behind a row of magnolia trees. His name tag read Gage Whitmore, Security Chief, the letters pressed into brass like a warning. Marcella closed the car door, smoothed the front of her navy dress, took 3 measured breaths before responding. "I'm a guest." Gage did not move. His eyes traveled from her low heels to her silver earrings to the clutch purse tucked under her arm, and something in his expression shifted from dismissal to suspicion. The evening sun caught the edge of the gate behind him, illuminating a brass plaque bolted to the stone pillar. Marcella read it without turning her head. Bellehaven Estate. Private event. Trespassers, subject to prosecution under Georgia Code. Section 16 to 721. Management reserves the right to refuse entry. She had memorized that statute years ago. Criminal trespass in Georgia required that a person knowingly and without authority enter or remain on property after receiving notice from an owner or authorized agent. The sign was a shield, not a sword. It meant nothing without proper notice from someone with actual authority. Gage stepped closer. "Guest of who?" "The groom." "Name?" "Marcella Dunbar." He pulled a tablet from his back pocket, scrolled with exaggerated slowness. His thumb paused, scrolled again, paused. Not seeing it. Marcella opened her clutch, extracted a cream envelope, and held it toward him. The invitation inside was printed on heavy cardstock, embossed with gold lettering. She had received it 8 months ago, hand-delivered to her chambers by a young man who had stood in her doorway with tears in his eyes and whispered, "You saved my life, Your Honor. Please come." She did not say any of this. Gage took the envelope, examined it like a detective inspecting a forgery, turned it over, held it up to the fading light. This could be from anywhere. It could be, but it isn't. A walkie-talkie crackled on his belt. He ignored it. From somewhere inside the estate, a string quartet began to play, the first notes of Pachelbel's canon drifting through the Spanish moss like a memory. And then a voice. "Gage, is there a problem?" A woman appeared at the gate, late 50s. Blonde hair swept into an architectural updo, a mother of the bride sash draped across her cream-colored gown. Her smile was the kind that took years of practice to perfect, the kind that welcomed and warned in equal measure. Lila Vance Ashford studied Marcella the way one might study an unexpected stain on white linen. "This woman claims she's a guest." Lila's smile did not waver. "I don't recall this name on my list." The emphasis was surgical. My list. Not the guest list. Not the couple's list. Hers. Marcella kept her voice level. "I was invited by Marcus 8 months ago." "Marcus?" Lila repeated the name as if tasting something sour. "My future son-in-law has a generous heart, sometimes too generous." She glanced at Gage. "Check with the groom's side. If his people can verify, let her through. Otherwise—" She let the silence complete the sentence. Gage reached for his walkie-talkie. Lila turned and disappeared back through the gate, her heels clicking against the cobblestone path like a metronome counting down. Marcella waited. The string quartet finished its piece. Began another. A car passed on the road behind her, slowing briefly before accelerating away. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked 3 times and went silent. Gage's walkie-talkie crackled again. A voice, male, bored. "Yeah, she's on the secondary list. Groom's personal invites. Let her through." Gage's jaw tightened. He handed back the invitation without looking at her, stepped aside, and gestured toward the gate with the enthusiasm of a man directing traffic at a funeral. "Enjoy the wedding." Marcella walked through. The cobblestone path stretched ahead, flanked by gas lanterns that had not yet been lit. The main house rose in the distance, a white-columned antebellum mansion that had been photographed for magazines and featured in tourism brochures, and, according to the Georgia Commission on Equal Opportunity, had settled 3 discrimination complaints in the past 5 years. All sealed, all buried, all forgotten. She had looked it up before coming, a habit she had carried for 30 years. The path curved left toward a garden where white chairs had been arranged in perfect rows. Guests milled about in clusters, champagne flutes catching the last of the daylight, laughter rising and falling like waves. Marcella paused at the edge of the gathering and scanned the crowd the way she always did. Exits first, then faces, then whoever seemed to be in charge. 3 exits visible. A service tent to the north, the main house to the east, a parking lot to the west. Faces, mostly white, mostly middle-aged, mostly dressed in the kind of casual elegance that cost more than most people's monthly rent. And then the faces began to notice her. One by one, conversations paused. Eyes flickered, returned to their companions, flickered again. A woman in a pale pink dress leaned toward her husband and whispered something. He glanced at Marcella, then quickly away. A server carrying a tray of champagne changed direction mid-stride, angling away from her as if by accident. Marcella had seen this before. The careful dance of exclusion. The way a room could acknowledge your presence by pretending you did not exist. She walked toward the guest book table. A woman in her 30s was signing her name, taking her time with each letter as if preparing a legal document. She did not look up when Marcella arrived, did not shift to make room, simply continued writing until she was finished, set down the pen, and walked away without a word. Marcella signed her name, checked the seating chart posted beside the book. Her table assignment was in the back corner of the reception tent, near the service entrance. A small card attached to her place setting read, Table 47, Overflow. She had been to enough formal events to know what overflow meant. It meant last minute. It meant afterthought. It meant, we couldn't find anywhere else to put you. Or it meant something else entirely. She made her way toward the reception tent. The chairs inside were arranged around circular tables draped in white linen, numbered plaques rising from centerpieces of white roses and baby's breath. Tables 1 through 10 were near the stage where the band would play. Tables 11 through 20 flanked the dance floor. Tables 21 through 40 filled the middle section, close enough to see the head table where the bride and groom would sit. Table 47 was in a corner near the kitchen doors. 2 of its 8 chairs were occupied by an elderly couple who looked as confused as Marcella felt. The remaining chairs were empty, their place settings untouched. The elderly man looked up as Marcella approached. "Are you at this table too?" "Apparently. We're the groom's great-aunt and uncle, flew in from Michigan." He gestured at the empty seats. "Seems like they forgot about us." His wife, a small woman with silver hair and kind eyes, patted the chair beside her. "Sit, dear. At least we'll have some company." Marcella sat. From this angle she could see the head table clearly. 8 seats. 4 for the bride's family, 4 for the groom's. Lila Vance Ashford was already seated, adjusting the placement of a water glass with the precision of a surgeon. The groom's side was empty. A server approached their table with a tray of water glasses. She was black, late 40s, her uniform crisp, and her expression carefully neutral. Her name tag read, Greta. "Water, ma'am?" "Thank you." Greta set the glass down and lingered for just a moment, her eyes meeting Marcella's with something that might have been recognition. Not of identity, of situation. "If you need anything," Greta said quietly, "the service station is right through those doors." She moved on before Marcella could respond. The elderly woman from Michigan leaned closer. "They put you at the helps table, honey." Her husband shushed her. "Edith." "What? It's true. Look where we are, next to the kitchen, far from everyone. You think that's an accident?" Marcella said nothing, but she did not disagree. If you're already hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. The ceremony began at 6:15 p.m. Marcella watched from a seat in the back row, 3 places from the aisle. The guests around her had arranged themselves with the careful choreography of people who knew exactly where they belonged. Friends of the bride on the left, their chairs angled toward each other in clusters of familiarity. Friends of the groom on the right, smaller in number, quieter in demeanor. No one sat in the two seats directly beside Marcella. A man in a gray suit arrived late, glanced at the empty chairs, then continued down the row to find a different spot. The bride appeared at exactly 6:20 p.m. Her dress was cathedral-length, hand-beaded, the kind of gown that required its own insurance policy. She walked down the aisle on the arm of a silver-haired man who must have been her father. His expression caught somewhere between pride and the awareness that he was losing something he had spent decades protecting. Lila watched from the front row. Her smile never wavered, but her eyes tracked every detail. The positioning of the photographer, the angle of the videographer, the faces of the guests as they turned to watch her daughter pass. And then, briefly, her gaze found Marcella. The contact lasted less than a second, but in that second, Marcella understood something she had only suspected at the gate. This was not indifference. This was intent. The groom waited at the altar. Marcus Vance, 27 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of handsome that came from good genes and better trainers. He looked nervous in the way all grooms looked nervous, fidgeting with his cuffs, glancing at the gathered crowd as if searching for something. His eyes passed over Marcella twice without recognition. The third time, they stopped. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise. Then something else. Something that looked almost like shame. He looked away quickly, focused on his bride, and did not look back. The ceremony proceeded without incident. Vows were exchanged. Rings were presented. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife. The crowd applauded. The couple kissed. Cameras flashed. Marcella clapped along with everyone else. But she was watching Marcus. He had recognized her. She was certain of it. And whatever he felt about her presence, it was not the gratitude she had expected. The reception began at 7 p.m. Guests migrated from the ceremony garden to the reception tent, collecting fresh drinks and finding their assigned tables. Marcella returned to table 47 to find Edith and her husband exactly where she had left them, now joined by a young couple in their 20s who introduced themselves as second cousins of the groom, twice removed, invited out of obligation. "We've never actually met Marcus," the young woman admitted. "Just got a generic invitation in the mail. My mom made us come." Her boyfriend, or perhaps fiancé, judging by the ring on her finger, shrugged. Free food and an open bar could be worse. Marcella smiled politely and said nothing. The dinner service began with a salad course that arrived at table 47 approximately 15 minutes after every other table had been served. The server who delivered it was not Greta. This one was young, male, and clearly frazzled by the demands of a 300-person event. "Sorry for the delay," he muttered, distributing plates with the efficiency of someone who had stopped caring hours ago. The salad was wilted. Edith poked at it with her fork. "I've been to funerals with better food." Her husband sighed. "Edith, I'm just saying." The main course arrived with similar delays. By the time Marcella received her salmon, the guests at the head table had already finished dessert. She ate what she could and watched the room. The reception followed a predictable rhythm. First dances, parent dances, speeches. The best man, a thick-necked former fraternity brother, delivered a toast filled with inside jokes that made half the room laugh and the other half shift uncomfortably. The maid of honor, a tall blonde who could have been the bride's twin, gave a speech so polished it sounded rehearsed, which it probably was. And then the crowd began to mingle. This was the part Marcella had been waiting for. Not the ceremony, not the dinner. The movement, the conversations, the alliances forming and dissolving across the room like weather patterns. She stood from her table and made her way toward the bar, not because she wanted a drink, but because the bar was where people gathered when they wanted to be seen, and Marcella wanted to observe who was doing the seeing. She ordered a glass of sparkling water. The bartender, a young man with a practiced smile, handed it to her without comment. She turned to survey the room, and found herself face to face with Lila Vance Ashford. "Ms. Dunbar." Lila's voice was honeyed, lethal. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced." We met at the gate. Did we? I meet so many people at these events. Lila took a delicate sip of her champagne. How do you know my son-in-law? The question was innocent on its surface, but Marcella had spent 30 years listening to questions designed to extract information while appearing casual. This was not casual. We met through work, years ago. Work. Lila repeated the word as if testing its weight. And what line of work would that be? Public service. Lila's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. How noble. What kind of public service, if you don't mind my asking? The kind that serves the public. A beat of silence. Lila's smile flickered but did not break. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. She turned and walked away, her gown trailing behind her like the wake of a ship. Marcella watched her go, noting the direction she moved, the people she stopped to greet, the way the crowd parted to let her through. Lila Vance Ashford was not merely the mother of the bride. She was the center of gravity around which this entire event orbited, and she had just marked Marcella as a target. The first real test came at 7:42 p.m. Marcella had found a quiet spot near the edge of the tent, close enough to observe the dance floor, but far enough to avoid the crush of bodies moving to the band's rendition of a pop song she vaguely recognized. She was studying the exits again, a habit so ingrained she did it without thinking, when a scream cut through the music. Not a real scream, not the kind that signaled danger. The performative scream of someone who wanted attention. A woman in her late 20s was standing near the gift table, one hand pressed to her chest, the other gesturing wildly. My clutch! Someone took my clutch! The music stuttered, then stopped. Guests turned toward the commotion. Security personnel materialized from the edges of the tent, Gage Whitmore among them. Ma'am, calm down. What happened? My clutch was right here. The woman, whose name Marcella did not know, pointed at an empty chair beside the gift table. I set it down for 1 second to take a photo, and now it's gone. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Eyes began to move, searching for the missing item, searching for someone to blame. And one by one, those eyes found Marcella. She felt it before she saw it. The weight of attention. The shift in the room's atmosphere. She had been standing apart from the crowd, alone, unaccompanied, wearing a dress that cost less than most of the jewelry on display. She was the obvious suspect. A man approached her, tall, dark-haired, wearing the confident smile of someone who expected to be obeyed. His suit was expensive. His watch was more expensive. His manner suggested he was accustomed to handling problems. Ma'am, I'm Wells Colton. I'm a friend of the family. He extended his hand, then withdrew it before she could take it. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding, but would you mind if we checked your bag, just to clear things up? The question was framed as a request, but his tone made clear it was not. Marcella did not move. On what basis? Wells blinked. Excuse me? On what basis are you asking to search my personal property? I'm just trying to help resolve the situation. By searching my bag without evidence or consent? Wells's smile flickered. Look, I understand this might feel uncomfortable, but it doesn't feel uncomfortable, Mr. Colton. It feels like you're asking to search my property without cause, which you are. She kept her voice level, controlled. I'm going to decline. The room had gone quiet. The woman who had lost her clutch was watching with undisguised hostility. Gage Whitmore had positioned himself closer, his hand resting on his belt. Wells leaned in slightly. His voice dropped to a register meant to sound reasonable. Ms. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Dunbar. Miss Dunbar. I'm an attorney. I know this feels like an imposition, but we have a missing item, and frankly, the simplest way to resolve this is for everyone to cooperate. Everyone? I'm sorry? You said everyone, but you haven't asked anyone else to empty their bags. Just me. Wells's jaw tightened. You were standing alone, away from the crowd. It's not unreasonable to assume that the only black woman at this wedding must be the thief? The word landed like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples of discomfort spread through the nearest guests. Someone coughed. Someone else looked away. Wells's smile had completely disappeared now. "I never said anything about, you didn't have to." A long moment passed. Wells seemed to be calculating his next move, weighing options, considering angles. Marcella recognized the process. She had seen it 1,000 times in courtrooms, in depositions, in the careful dance of legal combat. And then a new voice entered the conversation. "Wells, what's going on here?" The speaker was a man Marcella recognized, not from memory, from photographs, from news articles, from the research she had done before agreeing to attend this wedding. Gregory Ashford, the bride's father, retired partner at one of Savannah's oldest law firms, connected to every institution that mattered in this city. "Mr. Ashford." Wells straightened. Meredith lost her clutch. "I was just asking the guests to—" "I heard what you were asking." Gregory's eyes moved to Marcella, assessing, calculating. "And I heard what she said." He turned back to Wells. "Stand down." "Sir?" "I said stand down. This isn't a criminal investigation. It's a missing purse at a wedding. If Meredith can't keep track of her belongings, that's not everyone else's problem." Wells looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Gregory's tone stopped him. He stepped back, nodded once, and retreated toward the bar without another word. Gregory Ashford turned to Marcella. "I apologize for my wife's associate. Wells can be overly zealous." "Your wife's associate?" "He does legal work for her charity foundation." Gregory's expression was unreadable. "I'd recommend staying close to the main gathering for the rest of the evening. Less opportunity for misunderstandings." He walked away before she could respond. Marcella stood very still, processing. Gregory Ashford had intervened. That was unexpected. But his warning, "Stay close, avoid misunderstandings," was not a kindness. It was a message. He knew something was happening, and he was telling her to watch her back. 7 minutes later, the clutch was found. Meredith herself discovered it, wedged beneath her own chair where it had apparently fallen during the commotion. She laughed, high and bright, and waved the clutch above her head like a trophy. "Found it! I am such a mess after 2 champagnes." The crowd chuckled. The tension dissolved. The band resumed playing. No one apologized to Marcella. She returned to table 47. Edith was watching her with an expression that had shifted from curiosity to something harder, more protective. "That was deliberate," the old woman said quietly. "I know. They wanted to humiliate you, or worse." "I know." Edith's husband put a hand on his wife's arm. "We should go back to the hotel." "Not yet." Edith kept her eyes on Marcella. "I want to see how this plays out." Marcella almost smiled. There was something familiar about Edith, something that reminded her of the women she had known growing up in Detroit, the ones who had survived worse than a missing clutch and a roomful of suspicious eyes. "It's going to get worse before it gets better," Marcella said. "I figured." Edith reached over and patted Marcella's hand. "But you've got at least 2 people at this table who see exactly what's happening, and we're not going anywhere." It was such a small thing, a pat on the hand, a declaration of solidarity, but in a room full of people who had decided she did not belong, it mattered. Marcella squeezed Edith's hand once, then let go. "Thank you." The wedding coordinator found Marcella at 8:23 p.m. His name was Dorian Merrick, according to the embroidered name on his blazer. He was thin, precise, carrying a clipboard like a weapon. His approach was all efficiency, no warmth. "Ms. Dunbar?" "Yes?" "I've been asked to clarify a small matter regarding your attendance." Marcella did not stand. "What kind of matter?" Dorian consulted his clipboard with exaggerated care. "Your name appears on what we call the secondary list, the groom's personal invitations. However, there seems to be some confusion about whether that list was finalized before the cutoff date. Meaning? Meaning I need to verify your invitation directly with the groom before I can confirm your attendance. I showed my invitation at the gate. It was verified. I was admitted. Yes, but as I said, there's some question about the secondary list. Is there a question about anyone else on the secondary list? Dorian's eyes flickered. I don't understand. The elderly couple beside me. They're also from the groom's side. Have you asked to verify their attendance? That's different. How? Dorian's expression tightened. He was not accustomed to being questioned. His entire career was built on people accepting his authority without challenge. Miss Dunbar, I'm simply trying to ensure that our guest list is accurate. If you'll just wait here, I'll speak with Mr. Vance and... I'll wait. She said it calmly, but with enough steel that Dorian hesitated. He nodded once, made a note on his clipboard, and walked away toward the head table. Edith leaned over. That man is a weasel. Yes. What are you going to do? Marcella watched Dorian approach the head table, watched him lean down to whisper something to Marcus, watched Marcus's face shift through a series of expressions, none of them good. I'm going to document everything. She opened her clutch and withdrew her phone, pulled up her camera app, photographed her invitation, including the date stamp on the envelope, photographed the time on her phone, typed a quick note in her memo app, recording the conversation with Dorian word for word while it was still fresh in her memory. Documentation. Always documentation. It was a habit she had developed early in her career, back when she was a young prosecutor facing cases where evidence disappeared and witnesses changed their stories. The only defense against revisionist history was a contemporaneous record. She was still typing when a shadow fell across her table. Ms. Dunbar. She looked up. Marcus Vance stood before her. He was taller than she remembered, broader. 15 years could change a person's physical presence, but his eyes were the same. Wide, dark, carrying something heavy beneath the surface. Mr. Vance, I'm sorry about Dorian, and about... He gestured vaguely toward the room, the tent, the entire evening. I'm sorry about all of it. Are you? The question landed harder than she had intended. Marcus flinched. I didn't know they would... He stopped, glanced over his shoulder. His bride was watching from the head table, her expression unreadable. His mother-in-law was watching too, her expression not unreadable at all. I should have met you at the gate myself. I should have introduced you. I should have done a lot of things. Why didn't you? Because I'm a coward. The admission was so blunt, so unexpected, that Marcella found herself at a loss for words. Marcus continued, his voice barely above a whisper. They told me you were trouble, that you'd make a scene, that you'd embarrass me, and I believed them. Or I let myself believe them because it was easier than fighting. Easier than fighting whom? My wife's family, her mother, the whole... He made that vague gesture again, encompassing everything. I didn't want to start my marriage with a war. So you chose to start it with a betrayal instead. Marcus looked like she had slapped him. His face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Shock, denial, anger, and finally something that might have been acceptance. Yes, I suppose I did. A long moment passed. The band was playing again, something slow and romantic. Couples were drifting toward the dance floor. Someone laughed. Someone clinked a glass. You should go back to your wife, Marcella said finally. Ms. Dunbar. Judge. The word escaped before she could stop it. A reflex. A correction she had made 1,000 times in 1,000 courtrooms to lawyers who forgot themselves. Marcus's eyes went wide. Judge? He breathed the word. You're a... Go back to your wife, Mr. Vance. We can talk another time. But... Go. He went. Marcella watched him return to the head table, watched him whisper something to his bride, watched Lila Vance Ashford lean in to ask a question. Marcus shook his head, said something she could not hear. Lila's expression shifted, just slightly, from confidence to curiosity. Edith was staring at Marcella with an entirely new expression. "Judge?" Marcella closed her eyes briefly. "I would appreciate it if you kept that to yourself." "Of course, but—" Edith's voice dropped. "What kind of judge?" "The federal kind." Edith's husband made a sound that was half cough, half laugh. "Holy cow." "Indeed." The old woman's hand found Marcella's again. This time the pat was replaced by a firm grip. "They have no idea what they've stepped into, do they?" "No." "Good." Edith's smile was fierce. Let them find out the hard way. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. The escalation began at 8:47 p.m. Marcella had left table 47 to use the restroom, a small building adjacent to the main house that had been decorated with the same excessive elegance as everything else at Bellehaven Estate. Marble countertops, gold fixtures, fresh flowers in crystal vases. She washed her hands, checked her reflection, took 3 breaths. When she opened the door to leave, Gage Whitmore was waiting outside. "Ms. Dunbar." "Mr. Whitmore." "I've been asked to escort you to the main house." "By whom?" "Venue management." "For what purpose?" Gage's expression was flat, professional, but there was something beneath it, something that looked almost like anticipation. "A private conversation, to clear up some confusion about your attendance." "I've already cleared up that confusion, twice." "This is a different kind of conversation." Marcella did not move. "Am I being detained?" "No, ma'am, just requested." "Then I decline." Gage stepped closer, not touching her, not yet, but close enough that she could smell the aftershave he wore, something woodsy and sharp. "Ms. Dunbar, I'm trying to handle this politely, but you're making it difficult. I'm exercising my right to decline an informal request. There's nothing difficult about that. The people who run this venue want to speak with you. Then they can approach me directly, in public, with witnesses." Gage's jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake." "Perhaps, but it's my mistake to make." A long moment passed. Marcella could hear the band still playing in the distance, the muffled sound of applause after a song ended. Someone walked past on the path nearby, glanced at them, and hurried on. Gage stepped back. "Fine, have it your way." He walked away, but as he rounded the corner, he pulled out his phone and began typing something. A message, a report. Marcella watched him go. Then she pulled out her own phone and typed a quick text to a number she had memorized years ago. "At Bellehaven Estate. Situation escalating. May need documentation of pattern. Please pull prior complaint history if possible." She sent the message and returned to the reception tent. The situation Marcella was walking back into had changed in her absence. She sensed it before she saw it. The shift in the room's energy. The way conversations had clustered around certain points instead of flowing freely. The positioning of bodies. Lila Vance Ashford was standing near the gift table, surrounded by a small group of women who were nodding at whatever she was saying. Every few seconds, one of them would glance toward the tent entrance. Wells Colton was near the bar, speaking in low tones with 2 other men. One of them was Gage Whitmore. The other was someone Marcella had not seen before, a heavy-set man in a blazer with a badge clipped to his belt. A badge. Marcella's pace slowed slightly. She studied the newcomer without making it obvious. The badge was gold, or gold-colored. The words were too far away to read, but the shape was familiar. Sheriff's Department, or police. Off-duty, based on the blazer and slacks, but armed, based on the bulge at his hip. He was here as security, hired muscle with legal authority, and he was staring directly at her. She continued to her table as if nothing had changed. Edith was still there, watching the room with the sharp eyes of a woman who had survived decades of navigating spaces where she was not entirely welcome. "They brought in reinforcements," Edith murmured as Marcella sat down. "I noticed." The man with the badge, Deputy something. I heard someone call him Beckford. Deputy Beckford. Marcella filed the name away. Did you hear anything else? Just that he's off duty. Working private security for the family. Edith paused. They're getting serious. Yes. What are you going to do? Marcella considered the question. She could leave, walk out the door, get in her rental car, drive back to the hotel, and pretend none of this had happened. She had made her point. She had shown her face. She had let Marcus know that she remembered, even if he had tried to forget. But leaving now would mean accepting defeat. It would mean letting them win. It would mean confirming every assumption they had made about her since she arrived. And Marcella Dunbar had not spent 30 years in public service by accepting defeat. I'm going to finish my evening, she said, and I'm going to document everything they do between now and when I leave. And then we'll see what happens. The confrontation came at 9:12 p.m. Marcella was standing near the edge of the dance floor, watching couples sway to a slow song, when a voice spoke from behind her. Ms. Dunbar? She turned. Deputy Sloane Beckford stood a few feet away, his badge now prominently displayed on his belt, his hands clasped in front of him in the universal posture of law enforcement at rest. He was younger than she had expected, early 40s, clean-shaven, the kind of face that could be friendly or threatening depending on what he needed it to be. Right now, it was trying for friendly. But his eyes said something else. I'm Deputy Beckford, Chatham County Sheriff's Office. You're off duty. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. How did you... Your blazer, your badge placement, the way you're carrying. She nodded toward his right hip. Standard issue sidearm, but no duty belt, no radio. You're working private security, not official capacity. Beckford's expression hardened slightly. You seem to know a lot about law enforcement. I know a lot about many things. I see. He took a small step closer. Well, since you're so knowledgeable, you probably understand that when venue management asks for assistance, I have an obligation to respond. Venue management, or the bride's family? Does it matter? It matters under Georgia Code Section 16 to 721. Another flicker of surprise, deeper this time. You've done your research. The sign at the gate was very informative. Beckford studied her for a long moment. She could see him recalculating, adjusting his approach. Ms. Dunbar, I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm just here to make sure the evening goes smoothly. And how do I fit into that goal? Several guests have expressed concerns. About? About your presence, your behavior, the incident with the missing clutch. The clutch that was found under its owner's chair? That incident? Nevertheless, concerns were raised. Marcella felt something cold settle in her chest. She had been here before. Different cities, different faces, but always the same conversation, the same careful language designed to sound reasonable while being anything but. Deputy Beckford, let me be very clear about something. Her voice was level, controlled. I am a guest at this wedding. I was invited by the groom. I have committed no crime. I have caused no disturbance. The only incident of the evening was when I declined to submit to an unlawful search. Unlawful? Without probable cause or consent, yes. Unlawful. Beckford's friendly expression had completely disappeared now. What remained was harder, more professional. Ma'am, the family has asked me to request that you leave. The family is not the property owner. They're authorized representatives of the venue. Are they? I'd like to see that authorization in writing. Excuse me? If they have written authorization from the property owner to act as their agent for purposes of excluding guests, I'd like to see it. Georgia law requires that notice come from an owner or authorized agent. The family is neither. Beckford's jaw tightened. Are you a lawyer? No. Then how do you... I read. A long, tense moment passed. Around them, the wedding continued. The band played. Guests laughed and drank and danced. No one seemed to notice the confrontation happening at the edge of the floor, or if they noticed, they had chosen to ignore it. "Ms. Dunbar," Beckford's voice had dropped to a register meant to sound authoritative. "I'm going to ask you one more time. Please leave the venue. And I'm going to tell you one more time. No. If you refuse to leave, then you'll have to decide whether you're willing to detain me without probable cause while off duty at a private event with no official authority in front of 300 witnesses who are already curious about why the only black guest at this wedding is being harassed by security." Beckford went very still. Marcella continued, her voice still level, still controlled. "I am not resisting. I am not fleeing. I am not causing a disturbance. I am standing at a wedding I was invited to attend, exercising my right to remain. If you put your hands on me, Deputy, you will be doing so without legal justification, and I will document everything." She held up her phone. The camera was recording. "Starting now." Beckford stared at the phone, at her, at the phone again, and then, very slowly, he stepped back. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "No," Marcella agreed. "It isn't." He turned and walked away, his shoulders tight with barely contained frustration. She watched him rejoin Wells and Gage near the bar, watched the three of them lean together in urgent conversation, watched their heads turn toward her in unison. She lowered her phone but did not stop recording. Edith appeared at her elbow. "That was incredible. That was necessary. What happens now?" Marcella watched the three men across the room. They were joined by Dorian, the wedding coordinator. 4 men in suits, conspiring openly. Now they decide how far they're willing to go. The answer came at 9:38 p.m. Marcella had returned to table 47, where Edith and her husband were gathering their things. The young couple had already left, citing an early morning flight. The table was nearly empty now, a small island of quiet in a sea of celebration. "We're going to head back to the hotel," Edith said, squeezing Marcella's hand. "But I want you to know something." "What's that?" "Whatever happens next, we saw it. Harold and me. We're witnesses." Her husband nodded. "If you need us to make a statement, you let us know. We'll be in town until Tuesday." Marcella felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Thank you, both of you." They exchanged information. Phone numbers? Email addresses. Edith pressed a business card into Marcella's hand, revealing what she had not mentioned all evening. Edith Pearson, attorney at law, retired. Michigan State Bar. "Retired," Edith said with a small smile, "but not useless." They left through the side exit, arm in arm, glancing back once before disappearing into the night. Marcella was alone at the table when the lights went out. Not all the lights, just the ones in her corner of the tent. A bank of fixtures flickered, buzzed, and went dark, plunging table 47 into shadow. "Technical difficulty," a voice announced from somewhere near the stage. "We're looking into it." But Marcella knew better. She stood, gathering her clutch, preparing to move toward the lighted portion of the tent, and found her path blocked. 4 figures, backlit by the reception's festive glow, recognizable by silhouette: Gage, Wells, Dorian, and behind them, larger than the others, Deputy Beckford. "Ms. Dunbar," Wells's voice was silk over steel, "we need to talk." "Then talk. Privately." "No. I'm afraid that's not an option." Wells stepped closer. "You've caused quite enough disruption for one evening. The Ashfords have been very patient, but patience has limits." "Is that a threat, Mr. Colton?" "It's an observation." He smiled, and there was nothing friendly in it. "You're a guest here by the thinnest of technicalities. The groom may have sent you an invitation, but the groom is not in charge. He never was." "Who is in charge?" "The people who matter. The people who built this community. The people who decide who belongs and who doesn't." Wells leaned closer. "And, Ms. Dunbar, you do not belong." Marcella felt her pulse quicken but kept her voice steady. "That's your position?" "That's everyone's position. You just haven't figured it out yet." "I've figured out plenty tonight, Mr. Colton. I've figured out that Bellehaven Estate has settled 3 discrimination complaints in the past 5 years. I've figured out that Deputy Beckford is displaying his badge while working a private security contract, which may or may not violate departmental policy. I figured out that you attempted to manufacture consent for an illegal search earlier this evening. And I've figured out that right now, 4 men are attempting to intimidate a woman in a darkened corner of a wedding reception." She paused. "None of that is a good look for any of you." Wells's smile faltered. Behind him, Gage shifted uncomfortably. Dorian was staring at his clipboard as if it might offer guidance. Only Beckford remained unmoved. "You think you're clever," Beckford said quietly. "You think knowing statutes and recording conversations makes you untouchable. But the law doesn't work the way you think it does. Not here, not in this county." "Are you saying you're above the law, Deputy?" "I'm saying the law is flexible, and you're not as protected as you think." Marcella held his gaze. "I'm more protected than you know." Something flickered in Beckford's expression. Doubt, curiosity, or perhaps the first faint tremor of recognition. Before he could respond, a new voice cut through the darkness. "Is there a problem here?" Gregory Ashford emerged from the shadows, a glass of whiskey in one hand, his expression carefully neutral. Wells straightened. "Mr. Ashford, we were just—" "I can see what you were doing." Gregory's voice was flat, unreadable. "I can see it very clearly, and I'm telling you to stop." "Sir, this woman—" "I know exactly who this woman is." Gregory looked at Marcella. For the first time all evening, she saw something in his eyes that might have been respect, or fear. "And I'm telling you to leave her alone." A beat of silence. Wells looked like he wanted to argue. Beckford's jaw was tight with suppressed anger, but neither spoke. Gregory turned to Marcella. "Ms. Dunbar, I believe you've made your point, whatever that point may be." He took a sip of his whiskey. "My advice, for what it's worth, is to leave now. Not because they're going to win, but because some battles aren't worth fighting on enemy territory." "Is that what this is? Enemy territory?" "Tonight it is." He glanced at the 4 men behind him. "Tomorrow may be different." Marcella considered his words, considered the room, considered what she had learned and what remained to be learned. "I'll leave when I'm ready, Mr. Ashford, not before." Something that might have been a smile crossed Gregory's face. "I thought you might say that." He walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving Marcella alone with the 4 men who had tried to intimidate her. Wells spoke first. "You should have taken his advice." "Probably." "You're going to regret staying." "Probably." Marcella picked up her clutch. "But I've built a career on doing things I might regret, and so far it's worked out reasonably well." She walked past them, shoulder nearly brushing Gage's arm, and made her way toward the service entrance. She needed air. She needed space. She needed to process everything that had happened and everything that was still to come. The service entrance opened onto a small courtyard, lit by a single lamp. Catering staff moved back and forth, carrying trays and boxes. Among them, Marcella spotted Greta, the woman who had served her water earlier. Greta saw her too, excused herself from her colleagues, approached with the careful discretion of someone accustomed to navigating dangerous spaces. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." Greta glanced back toward the tent. "They've been watching you all night. The whole staff's been talking about it." "What are they saying?" "That Mrs. Vance Ashford wants you gone. That security's been told to make it happen. That—" Greta hesitated. "That this isn't the first time." "What do you mean?" "I mean you're not the first person they've done this to. Not by a long shot." She lowered her voice further. "My nephew works county IT. He says Bellehaven's security system records everything. Cameras everywhere. Parking lot, gates, inside the main hall. 90 days of footage, then it gets archived." Marcella's mind was already working. "Is that footage accessible?" "If you know where to look, or if you have the authority to request it." What kind of authority? Greta studied her for a long moment. Something passed between them. Understanding, recognition. The kind of authority that can make things happen, Greta said finally. If you know what I mean. Marcella did know. She knew exactly what Greta meant. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Greta pressed something into her hand, a cocktail napkin with handwriting on it. That's the server name, the archive location. Everything's backed up automatically because of the county contract. If it matters enough to someone important, it can be found. Marcella looked at the napkin. Bellehaven Events Archive. Security server. All footage. 90-day retention. County contract. Requires preservation if subpoenaed. Why are you helping me? She asked. Greta's smile was small, sad, knowing. Because I've been watching women like you walk into places like this my whole life, and most of them walk out with their heads down, thinking they deserved what they got. She paused. But you're not like most of them, I can tell. How can you tell? Because you're still here, and you're not crying, and you're not apologizing. Greta straightened her uniform. That means you're either crazy or you know something they don't. Maybe both. Maybe. Greta began to turn away, then stopped. One more thing. That Deputy Beckford. I've seen him here before, not at weddings, at board meetings. He does private work for the family. The Vances, I mean. Not the Ashfords. What kind of work? The kind people don't talk about. Greta's voice dropped to barely a whisper. There was another complaint, a few years back. A woman who said she was harassed at an event here, tried to file with the EEOC. Then suddenly she dropped the whole thing, moved out of state. What happened to her? Nobody knows. But Beckford was working security that night too. Greta met her eyes. Be careful, Ms. Dunbar. These people don't play fair. She walked away before Marcella could respond. Marcella stood in the courtyard, alone, clutching a napkin with secrets on it, processing information that had shifted everything. This was bigger than tonight. Bigger than a wedding. Bigger than one woman being asked to leave. This was a pattern, a system, a machine designed to crush anyone who did not fit, and she had just become its newest target. Her phone buzzed, a text from the number she had messaged earlier. Pulled records. Bellehaven has 3 prior complaints, all settled, all sealed, pattern consistent. D. She saved the message, took a screenshot, typed a quick reply. Need more. Who settled? Who sealed? Any connection to local law enforcement? The response came almost immediately. Digging. Will send what I find. Be safe. Be safe. Marcella looked up at the stars. They were bright here, far from the city lights, the kind of stars you could only see in places where the world pretended to be simpler than it was. She thought about leaving, getting in her car, driving away. Letting this become another story she told at dinner parties, another example of the small cruelties that black women navigated every day in America. But then she thought about the woman who had dropped her complaint, who had moved out of state, who had disappeared. And she thought about all the women who might come after, walking into spaces like this, facing men like Beckford and Wells and Gage, wondering why no one had warned them. She put her phone away, straightened her shoulders, and walked back into the tent. The band was playing something upbeat now. The dance floor was crowded. Champagne was flowing. Everything looked normal, festive, safe. But Marcella knew better. She scanned the room, found what she was looking for. Marcus Vance was standing near the edge of the dance floor, alone for the first time all evening. His bride was surrounded by friends. His mother-in-law was holding court at the head table. His father-in-law was nowhere to be seen. Marcella approached him. Mr. Vance. He turned. His expression cycled through surprise, guilt, something that might have been hope. Ms. Dunbar, I thought you'd left. Not yet. I'm glad. He paused. I mean, I'm sorry about everything, but I'm glad you're still here. Why? Because I need to tell you something. He glanced around, checking for observers. Not here. Can we talk outside? Marcella hesitated. Every instinct she had developed over 30 years told her to be cautious, to document, to never let herself be alone with someone whose loyalties were unclear. But there was something in Marcus's voice, something that sounded like a man at the edge of a decision he could not unmake. 5 minutes, she said. In the courtyard, where people can see us. He nodded quickly. 5 minutes. Drop a comment telling me what you think is about to happen. I love reading your predictions. They met near the lamp post, visible from the service entrance, close enough to the tent that raised voices would be heard. Marcella had chosen the spot deliberately. Witnesses, escape routes, light. Marcus looked like a man who had not slept in days. I need to tell you something about my wife's family, he said without preamble. Something I should have told you before I sent that invitation. Go on. Lila didn't want you here. She tried to get me to uninvite you. When that didn't work, she tried to have the invitation invalidated. When that didn't work, she made arrangements. What kind of arrangements? The security, the seating, the confusion about your name on the list? All of it. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. She's been planning this for months, as soon as she found out you were invited. Marcella felt something cold settle in her stomach. Why? Because she knows who you are. The words hung in the air. Marcella kept her expression neutral, but her mind was racing. Explain. I never told her your name was Marcella Dunbar. I just said I wanted to invite the judge who helped clear my name. But she found out anyway. She has people who find things out. And when she found out? She was furious. Not because you helped me, but because of what happened before. Before? Marcus looked like he was about to be sick. Judge Dunbar, you oversaw a case about 8 years ago, a civil rights lawsuit against a resort property in South Carolina. The property lost. The owners were ordered to pay damages and implement reforms. Marcella searched her memory. 8 years ago was a lot of cases, a lot of decisions, a lot of... And then she remembered. The Palmetto Shores case. Yes. Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. That property was owned by a shell company. The shell company was owned by a trust. And the trust... He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. The trust was connected to the Vance family. Marcus nodded miserably. Lila's first husband's family. Old money. Very old. Very hidden. When you ruled against them, it cost them millions. And it cost Lila her position on their charitable foundation board. The pieces were falling into place now. Click, click, click. Like a combination lock opening to reveal something dark. This was not about tonight. This was not about a wedding or an uninvited guest or racial hostility, though all of those things were real. This was revenge. 8 years in the making. She's been waiting for this, Marcella said quietly. Yes. For a chance to humiliate me in front of people, to make me feel as powerless as she felt when that ruling came down. Yes. And you knew this, when you invited me. Marcus's face crumbled. I thought maybe if you came, if you saw that I'd made something of myself, it would be worth it. I thought I could protect you. Make sure nothing happened. But He stopped, swallowed. I underestimated her. I always underestimate her. Marcella studied him. The man who had once stood in her courtroom, wrongfully accused, facing years in prison for a crime he did not commit. She had fought for him because it was the right thing to do, because the evidence was clear, because the system had failed him, and she had the power to make it right. And now he stood before her, complicit in his mother-in-law's scheme, a puppet dancing on strings he had only begun to understand. You're telling me this now, she said. Why? because what happened tonight isn't the end. Lila has more planned. I don't know what exactly, but I heard her talking to Wells after the thing with the clutch. She said something about phase 2. Phase 2? I don't know what it means, but it's not good. He grabbed her arm, then let go immediately, as if burned. Please. I know I've done everything wrong. I know I'm a coward and a fool and worse. But please believe me when I tell you that whatever happens next, it's not about you as a person. It's about what you represent, what you did, the power you have that Lila can never have. Marcella considered his words, considered the evening, considered everything she knew and everything she still did not know. Where is your father-in-law? Marcus blinked at the change of subject. Gregory? I don't know. He left about 20 minutes ago. Said he had business to attend to. Business, at 10 p.m., on his daughter's wedding night. I don't know. He's always been... What? Marcus hesitated. Different. From Lila, I mean. He doesn't agree with her on certain things, but he doesn't stop her either. He just disappears. Interesting. Gregory Ashford had intervened twice tonight. First when Wells tried to search her bag, again when the 4 men confronted her in the dark. Both times he had stopped the escalation. Both times he had offered her a way out. Why? One more question, Marcella said. The woman who filed a complaint against Bellehaven a few years ago, the one who dropped the case and moved out of state. Do you know anything about that? Marcus went pale. How do you know about that? Answer the question. He looked around frantically, as if the walls might be listening. I can't. Not here. Not now. Then when? I don't know. I need to. He was sweating now, despite the cool evening air. Judge Dunbar, please, just be careful. And if something happens tonight, if things go wrong, remember that I tried to warn you. That's all I can do. It's more than I should have done. He turned and walked away, almost running, disappearing back into the tent without looking back. Marcella stood in the courtyard, alone with her thoughts. Phase 2. A woman who had disappeared. A father-in-law who kept intervening. A mother-in-law with 8 years of simmering revenge, and somewhere in the middle of it all, a deputy with a badge, a lawyer with an agenda, and a security chief with orders she still did not fully understand. The wedding was far from over, and the night was only beginning. She checked her phone. Another message from her contact. Found something. The woman who filed the complaint, her name was Denise Carter. She didn't just move, she changed her name. New identity, hiding from someone. Marcella felt her blood run cold. Who is she hiding from? The response took longer this time. 30 seconds. A minute. Then 3 words. Still digging. Dangerous. And then, almost immediately after, one more thing. Deputy Beckford was the responding officer when Denise Carter originally filed her complaint. His report is what got the case dismissed. His testimony is what made her look unreliable. Marcella read the message twice. Beckford. He was not just security. He was not just Lila's hired muscle. He was a participant, a key player in whatever had happened to Denise Carter. And now he was here, tonight, watching her, waiting for phase 2. She pocketed her phone and began to walk back toward the tent. But she stopped at the service entrance, watching through the glass doors as the reception continued inside. The dance floor was still crowded. The band was still playing. Champagne was still flowing. But near the bar, a new configuration had formed. Beckford, Wells, Gage, Dorian, and now, joining them, Lila Vance Ashford herself. 5 people, heads together, voices low, planning. Marcella watched as Lila looked up from the group and scanned the room. Her gaze moved methodically, section by section, until it stopped. On the service entrance. On Marcella. Their eyes met through the glass. Lila smiled. The kind of smile that said she knew something Marcella did not. The kind of smile that promised suffering without spelling out its shape. And then she raised her champagne glass in a mock toast. To you, the gesture seemed to say. To what comes next? Marcella did not look away. She held Lila's gaze for 1 second. 2. 3. And then she pushed open the door and walked back inside. Whatever came next, she would face it standing up. That was how she had lived her entire life. That was how she would survive tonight. The clock above the bar read 10:17 p.m. Phase 2, whatever it was, had not yet begun. But the pieces were moving. The players were positioning. The air itself seemed to thicken with anticipation. Marcella found a spot near the dance floor with clear sight lines to both exits and the bar where her enemies were gathered. She stood alone, but she did not feel alone. She felt alert, ready, prepared for whatever was coming. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was not her contact. It was a number she did not recognize. She opened the message. Judge Dunbar. We need to talk. Urgent. Meet me at the garden gate in 10 minutes. Come alone. No signature. No identification. She stared at the message, weighing options. A trap, obviously. Or perhaps not obviously. Perhaps someone else in this web of conspiracies had decided to flip, to reveal something, to offer help, or perhaps it was exactly what it looked like. She typed a response. Who is this? The reply came immediately. Someone who knows what happened to Denise Carter and what's about to happen to you. Marcella's heart beat faster. 10 minutes. The garden gate. Alone. Every instinct screamed that this was a mistake, that she should ignore the message, stay visible, wait for whatever phase 2 turned out to be, and deal with it in the light. But Denise Carter had disappeared, had changed her name, had hidden from something or someone powerful enough to make her entire life vanish. If there was even a chance of finding out what had happened to her, of understanding the full scope of what she was dealing with. She looked at the clock. 10:18 p.m. 9 minutes. She made her decision. She would go, but not alone, not truly. She opened her camera app, set it to record, and slipped the phone into her clutch with the lens facing out. Whatever happened at the garden gate, she would have documentation. Always documentation. She began walking toward the exit, her heels clicking against the floor in a rhythm that sounded almost like a countdown. 8 minutes. 7. 6. The tent flap parted, and the night air enveloped her, cool and sharp and full of secrets waiting to be revealed. Behind her, the wedding continued. The band played. The guests danced. The champagne flowed, and somewhere in the darkness ahead, someone was waiting. Someone who knew things. Someone who might hold the key to everything. Or someone who was about to make sure Marcella Dunbar never made it home. She walked toward the garden gate, toward the truth, toward the trap. She did not know which yet, but she was about to find out, and the night was far from over. The garden gate stood 20 yards ahead, wrought iron twisted into patterns that might have been decorative a century ago, but now looked like warnings. A single lamppost cast a pool of yellow light across the cobblestones, creating a stage where anyone waiting would be visible. No one was visible. Marcella slowed her pace, scanning the shadows beyond the lamplight. Her phone was still recording in her clutch. The lens pointed forward, capturing whatever came next. The sounds of the reception had faded to a distant murmur behind her, replaced by the chirp of crickets and the rustle of Spanish moss in the evening breeze. She stopped 10 feet from the gate. "I'm here." Her voice carried into the darkness. For a long moment, nothing responded. Then, movement. A figure stepping out from behind a massive oak tree, silhouetted against the deeper black of the night. Gregory Ashford. He walked into the lamplight with the unhurried gait of a man who had nothing to prove and everything to protect. His whiskey glass was gone. His expression was different now, stripped of the careful neutrality he had worn inside the tent. Judge Dunbar. The title landed like a stone in still water. Marcella did not react, did not confirm, did not deny. You sent the message. I did. You know who I am. I've known since the moment you stepped out of your car. Gregory reached into his jacket pocket. Marcella tensed, but he only withdrew a folded piece of paper which he held toward her. I've known for 8 years, actually, ever since you ruled against Palmetto Shores. She did not take the paper. What is that? A copy of your ruling. I keep it in my study, read it at least once a month. His voice carried something unexpected. Not anger, not resentment. It's a masterpiece of judicial reasoning, clear, fair, devastating to people who deserve to be devastated. Marcella studied him, recalibrating everything she thought she knew. You're not angry about the ruling? Angry? Gregory almost laughed. Judge, that ruling cost my wife's former in-laws a fortune. It embarrassed Lila. It ended her position on their foundation board. He paused. It was the best thing that ever happened to my marriage. The words made no sense. Marcella waited for clarification. Lila married into old money the first time, Gregory continued. Old, dirty money. The Vances made their fortune exploiting people and they never stopped. When you ruled against them, it created a rift. Lila had to choose sides. She chose me. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Or rather, she chose my money over their humiliation. And now she wants revenge on me for creating that choice. Now she wants to prove she's still powerful, that no one can touch her or her world. You're not a person to her, Judge. You're a symbol, a threat, a reminder that power has limits. Gregory stepped closer. And she's been planning tonight for a very long time. Phase 2. Gregory's expression flickered. You know about that. I know something is coming. I don't know what. He was quiet for a moment, seeming to weigh his options. Then he spoke, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Lila has arranged for Deputy Beckford to detain you. Officially. On the record. She's prepared a statement from Meredith claiming you attempted to steal her clutch. 3 other guests have agreed to corroborate. Marcella felt the cold spread through her chest again. False arrest, false statements, conspiracy. All of it, Gregory nodded. By the time your people sort out the truth, you'll have spent a night in county lockup. Your photo will be in the system. The arrest record will exist, even if charges are dropped. And Lila will make sure certain media contacts get the story first. A federal judge arrested for theft at a society wedding. Exactly. The truth won't matter. The headline will. Marcella's mind was racing, processing scenarios, calculating responses. But one question rose above all others. Why are you telling me this? Gregory was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried something that might have been shame. Because I've watched my wife destroy people for 30 years, and I've never done anything to stop her. He looked away, toward the lights of the reception tent in the distance. I told myself it wasn't my business, that the people she targeted probably deserved it somehow, that staying quiet was the price of a comfortable life. What changed? Denise Carter. The name hit Marcella like a physical blow. You know what happened to her. I know everything. Gregory's voice was heavy. I know Lila orchestrated the harassment that drove her out of the state. I know Beckford falsified his report to make her look unstable. I know Wells handled the legal threats that convinced her to drop her complaint. He paused. And I know that 6 months after she disappeared, she was found dead in a motel room in Arizona. Officially an overdose. Unofficially. He did not finish the sentence. Marcella felt something shift inside her, something that went beyond professional concern into territory that was deeply, personally dangerous. You think they killed her? I think they created conditions that killed her. Whether they pulled a trigger or just pulled away every support she had, the result was the same. Gregory met her eyes. And I think if I don't do something tonight, the same thing will happen to you. Maybe not death, but destruction, the kind you don't recover from. Why do you care what happens to me? Because you're the first person I've ever seen stand up to Lila and not flinch. His voice cracked slightly. And because I'm 73 years old, and I'd like to die knowing I did one good thing, one brave thing, one thing that mattered. They stood in silence for a moment. The crickets sang. The breeze rustled. Somewhere in the distance, the band was playing a ballad that seemed to belong to a different world entirely. "What do you want me to do?" Marcella asked finally. "Get ahead of them. Make your move before they make theirs." Gregory pressed the folded paper into her hand. "This isn't the ruling. It's something else. Contact information, documentation, everything I've collected over the years about Lila's activities. It's not enough for prosecution, probably, but it's enough for protection." Marcella unfolded the paper. Names, dates, file references, account numbers, a roadmap of corruption spanning decades. "Why give this to me?" "Because you're the only person I trust to use it correctly." Gregory stepped back. "I'm going to go back inside now. I'm going to pretend this conversation never happened. And tomorrow, when everything falls apart, I'm going to act surprised like everyone else." "And if they come after you?" "They won't. I'm too useful, too connected, too expensive to destroy." His smile was bitter. "That's the thing about being married to a monster. After a while, you become too embedded to remove." He turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing. Beckford is going to make his move at 11 p.m. That's when the reception officially ends and the venue can claim you're trespassing. You have about 40 minutes. To do what? To change the game." Gregory walked away, his footsteps fading into the darkness. "Good luck, Judge Dunbar. You're going to need it." And then he was gone. Marcella stood alone at the garden gate, holding a paper full of secrets, facing a deadline she had not known existed until moments ago. 40 minutes. She looked at her phone. 10:23 p.m. 40 minutes to stop a conspiracy, to protect herself, to expose a pattern that had already destroyed at least one life. She began walking back toward the tent. Not running, not fleeing, walking with purpose, with intent, with the calm determination of a woman who had spent 30 years navigating systems designed to break people like her. Lila Vance Ashford wanted a war. She was about to get one. The reception tent blazed with light and noise as Marcella re-entered. The band had shifted to up-tempo songs, and the dance floor was crowded with guests who had consumed enough champagne to forget their inhibitions. No one noticed her return. No one seemed to care. She scanned the room, looking for her targets. Beckford was near the bar, nursing a glass of something that looked like cola. His badge was more prominently displayed now, as if he wanted everyone to know what was coming. His eyes found Marcella almost immediately, tracking her movement across the tent. Wells was at a table near the stage, typing on his phone with the focused intensity of someone coordinating an operation. Gage stood nearby, arms crossed, waiting for orders. And Lila was at the head table, surrounded by guests, laughing at something someone had said. The perfect hostess, the perfect mother of the bride, the perfect predator in her natural habitat. Marcella needed allies. Fast. She spotted Councilwoman Teresa Wynne near the dessert table, picking at a slice of wedding cake with the distracted air of someone who would rather be anywhere else. Their earlier conversation had been brief, but something in Teresa's manner had suggested she was not entirely comfortable with the evening's events. Marcella approached her. "Councilwoman." Teresa looked up. Her expression shifted through surprise, wariness, and something that might have been relief. "Ms. Dunbar, I thought you'd left." "Not yet." Probably should have. Teresa set down her fork. "Things are getting complicated." "I noticed." Marcella kept her voice low. "I also noticed you've been watching, paying attention, taking notes." "That's my job, watching, paying attention." Teresa's eyes flickered toward the head table. "Taking notes on things I can't do anything about." "What if you could?" Teresa went very still. "What do you mean?" I mean that in approximately 35 minutes, Deputy Beckford is going to attempt to arrest me on fabricated charges. False statements have been prepared. Witnesses have been coached. The goal is to humiliate me publicly and destroy my reputation before anyone can establish the truth. Teresa's face paled. How do you know this? Someone with a conscience told me. Marcella leaned closer. Councilwoman, I know you have political ambitions. I know you're careful about which battles you fight. But I also know that you didn't get where you are by ignoring injustice when it happened right in front of you. You're asking me to take sides. I'm asking you to do your job. You're an elected official. You have oversight authority. You have the power to ask questions that other people can't ask. Marcella paused. And you have about 30 minutes to decide what kind of politician you want to be. Teresa was silent for a long moment. Her eyes moved across the room, taking in Beckford, Wells, Lila, the whole elaborate machinery of power and privilege that had gathered for this wedding. What do you need? She asked finally. Witnesses, documentation, someone with official standing who can observe what happens and report it through proper channels. Marcella pressed the folded paper into Teresa's hand. And someone to make sure this information reaches the right people if something happens to me tonight. Teresa looked at the paper. Her eyes widened as she scanned its contents. This is evidence of a pattern going back years. Marcella's voice was steady. Bellehaven, the complaints, the settlements, the woman who disappeared. It's all connected, and tonight is just the latest chapter. Why are you giving this to me? Because I need someone outside this web, someone who can act independently, someone who has nothing to lose by telling the truth. Marcella met her eyes. Can you be that person? Teresa looked at the paper again, at Marcella, at the room full of powerful people who would make her life very difficult if she chose the wrong side, and then she folded the paper and slipped it into her pocket. I can be that person. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Teresa's expression hardened. We still have to survive the next 30 minutes. If you want to see how this satisfies, hit subscribe and turn on notifications right now. The clock showed 10:31 p.m. when the first piece of Phase 2 fell into place. Meredith, the woman who had lost her clutch earlier, approached the head table and bent to whisper something in Lila's ear. Lila's expression did not change, but her posture shifted, straightened, prepared. She stood, smoothing her gown, and began walking toward the bar where Beckford was waiting. Marcella watched from across the room, her phone still recording in her clutch. Beside her, Teresa had positioned herself with a clear view of the unfolding scene. It's starting, Teresa murmured. Yes. Lila reached Beckford. Words were exchanged. Beckford nodded, set down his glass, and began moving through the crowd toward Marcella. His hand rested on his belt, near his badge, near the weapon concealed beneath his blazer. But before he could reach her, Marcella moved first. She walked directly toward the head table, toward the bride and groom, toward the microphone that sat on a stand beside the cake. Beckford hesitated, thrown off by the unexpected direction. He changed course to intercept, but Marcella was faster. She reached the microphone stand just as the band finished their song. Excuse me. Her voice carried through the speakers, cutting through the chatter of guests, freezing the room in mid-motion. I apologize for interrupting, but I have something to say. Lila's face twisted with barely concealed fury. She began pushing through the crowd toward the stage. Beckford was closing in from the other direction. Wells was on his feet, phone still in hand. But Marcella had the microphone. And for the next few seconds, she had the room. My name is Marcella Dunbar. I was invited to this wedding by Marcus Vance, the groom. 8 months ago, he came to my office and asked me personally to attend. He came because 15 years ago, I helped clear his name when he was wrongfully accused of a crime he did not commit. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Marcus, at the head table, had gone pale. His bride was staring at him with an expression of pure confusion. Tonight, I have been treated as a suspect, as a trespasser, as someone who does not belong. I have been publicly accused of theft, denied my seat, removed from the reception area, and threatened with arrest. All because certain people decided that my presence here was an inconvenience. Beckford had reached the edge of the stage. He was waiting, calculating, uncertain how to proceed with 300 witnesses watching. Marcella continued. Those people are about to attempt something very serious. They have prepared false statements. They have coordinated false witnesses. They are planning to have me arrested on fabricated charges, held overnight in county lockup, and publicly humiliated in a way designed to destroy my reputation. The murmur became a rumble. Guests were looking at each other, at Lila, at Beckford, trying to understand what they were witnessing. I know this because someone with a conscience told me, someone who could not stand by and watch another innocent person be destroyed by the machinery of power and privilege. Lila had reached the stage. Her face was a mask of controlled rage. "This woman is mentally unstable," she announced to the crowd. "She's been causing problems all evening. Deputy Beckford, please remove her." Beckford stepped forward. His hand reached for Marcella's arm, and then Marcus Vance stood up. "Stop." The word cut through the room like a blade. Beckford froze. Lila turned, her expression shifting from rage to calculation. "Marcus," she said sweetly, "this doesn't concern you. Let security handle." "I said stop." Marcus's voice cracked. He was shaking, visibly trembling, but he did not sit down. "She's telling the truth. About all of it." The room went silent. Truly silent. Even the band had stopped adjusting their instruments. Marcus walked toward the stage, each step seeming to cost him something. His bride was calling his name, but he did not look back. 15 years ago, I was 22 years old. I was arrested for armed robbery. I spent 14 months in county jail waiting for trial. My family couldn't afford bail. My public defender had 40 other cases. I was going to plead guilty, just to make it stop. He reached the stage and stood beside Marcella. And then this woman you've all been treating like a criminal, she found my case. She was a federal prosecutor back then, doing a civil rights audit. She saw the inconsistencies. She pushed. She fought. She got my case dismissed and the real perpetrator arrested. Tears were streaming down his face now. She gave me my life back, and I invited her here because I wanted to say thank you, in front of everyone, in front of my new family. I wanted to show her what I'd become, what she'd made possible. He turned to face Lila. "But you couldn't let that happen, could you? You couldn't let me have this one thing, this one moment, because she ruled against your precious Vances 8 years ago, because she cost you money, because she embarrassed you." Lila's face had gone white. "Marcus, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." His voice was raw. "I understand that you've been planning this for months, that you told me lies about her to keep me from interfering, that you turned my wedding into a trap." He looked at his bride. She was crying too, though whether from shock or shame was impossible to tell. "I'm sorry, Caitlin. I'm sorry I didn't tell you the truth. I'm sorry I let them manipulate both of us." He turned back to the crowd. "But I'm not going to let this happen, not to her, not to anyone." He faced Marcella. "Ms. Dunbar, I should have done this hours ago." He took a breath. "Everyone, this woman is not a thief. She is not a trespasser. She is not mentally unstable." He straightened. "She is the Honorable Marcella Dunbar, United States District Court Judge for the Southern District of Georgia." The words landed like bombs. 300 people stared. Beckford's hand dropped from Marcella's arm as if burned. Wells's phone clattered to the floor. Dorian made a sound that was half gasp, half moan, and Lila Vance Ashford, for the first time all evening, looked genuinely afraid. "Judge," she whispered. "Federal judge." "Yes." Marcella stepped closer to the microphone. "And Deputy Beckford, I should inform you that everything that has happened tonight has been documented, photographed, recorded, time-stamped. If you proceed with your planned arrest, you will be adding false imprisonment of a federal judicial officer to the list of charges that will be filed against you." Beckford backed away. His face had gone gray. I didn't know. I didn't. You knew you were planning to arrest an innocent woman on fabricated charges. Whether she was a judge or a janitor, that's a felony. Marcella turned to Wells. And Mr. Colton, you knew you were coordinating false witness statements. That's conspiracy, obstruction, potential disbarment. Wells opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, opened it. No words came out. Marcella addressed the crowd. I did not come here tonight to cause trouble. I came to support a young man who invited me to celebrate one of the happiest days of his life. Instead, I was forced to document a pattern of harassment, discrimination, and criminal conspiracy that has apparently been operating at this venue for years. She looked at Lila. Mrs. Vance Ashford, your activities tonight will be reported to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. The prior complaints against Bellehaven Estate will be unsealed and reviewed. Deputy Beckford's conduct will be referred to Internal Affairs. And the circumstances surrounding the disappearance of Denise Carter will be investigated by people with far more resources than a wedding guest. Lila's mouth moved, but no sound came out. This is not revenge, Marcella continued. This is accountability, something you've apparently avoided for a very long time, but that ends now. She stepped away from the microphone, turned to Marcus. Thank you. For telling the truth. For being brave. Marcus nodded, still crying. I should have been brave years ago. You were brave tonight. That's what matters. She walked toward the exit. The crowd parted before her like water. No one spoke. No one moved to stop her. Teresa Wynne fell into step beside her. That was incredible. That was necessary. What happens now? Marcella pushed through the tent flap and into the cool night air. Now the real work begins. 3 months later, the first consequences began to materialize. Marcella sat in her chambers, reviewing a brief that had nothing to do with Bellehaven Estate, or Lila Vance Ashford, or any of the events of that October evening. Outside her window, Savannah was experiencing an unseasonably warm December, the kind of weather that made people forget that consequences existed. Her clerk knocked on the door. Judge Dunbar, you have a delivery. Send it in. The delivery was an envelope, manila, official-looking, stamped with the seal of the Chatham County Sheriff's Office Internal Affairs Division. She opened it. Case number 2024 IA 11847. Subject, Deputy Sloan Beckford. Preliminary finding, policy violations regarding off-duty badge display and conduct unbecoming an officer. Current status, administrative leave pending full review. Anticipated disposition. Date, March 2025. Administrative leave, not termination, not arrest, just suspension with pay while the system slowly ground through its processes. It was not justice. Not complete justice. But it was a start. She set the document aside and pulled up another file on her computer. The Georgia State Bar had acknowledged receipt of her complaint against Wells Colton 3 weeks ago. Their response had been clinical, bureaucratic. Complaint against Wells Colton, ESQ, bar number 445892. Your complaint has been received and assigned to the Office of General Counsel for preliminary review. Please note that bar proceedings are confidential and may take 12 to 18 months to resolve. You will be notified of any formal action taken. 12 to 18 months. Wells Colton was still practicing law, still attending charity events, still living his comfortable life. The complaint was a shadow hanging over him, but shadows could be ignored if you tried hard enough. Another document sat on her desk. A newspaper clipping from the Savannah Morning News, dated 2 weeks after the wedding. Chatham County Council votes to suspend contracts with Bellehaven Estate. Councilwoman Teresa Wynne cites pattern concerns raised by undisclosed complaints. Venue owners deny wrongdoing. Vows legal action. Teresa had come through, not with dramatic gestures or public confrontations, but with the quiet, persistent work of someone who understood how systems actually changed. She had requested records, filed motions, asked questions in committee meetings, made it impossible for her colleagues to ignore what had been happening. The contracts were suspended, not terminated. suspended pending review. But for a venue that depended on government events and tourism board partnerships, suspension was devastating. Money talked. And money, interrupted, talked louder. Marcella's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the news about Bellehaven. Thank you. G.A. Gregory Ashford. Still married to Lila, according to the society pages. Still attending the same events. Still playing the role of supportive husband while quietly undermining his wife's empire. She did not respond. Some relationships were too complicated for words. A handwritten letter had arrived the week before. She kept it in her desk drawer, had read it 3 times already, and would probably read it 3 times more. Judge Dunbar, I should have said something sooner. I should have protected you from the beginning. I let them convince me you were the enemy when you were the only real friend I had. Caitlin and I are in counseling. I don't know if the marriage will survive, but I know I can't keep living the way I was living. Thank you for not holding it against me. Thank you for being brave. I'm trying to be brave too. Marcus. She had not responded to that letter either. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Some things did not need words. They needed time. Her clerk knocked again. Judge, your 2 o'clock is here. The Weston case. Send them in. Work continued. The law continued. Justice, imperfect and incomplete, continued. But there were threads still dangling. Questions still unanswered. The security footage from Bellehaven, for instance. She had subpoenaed it through proper channels, working with the U.S. Attorney's Office to establish jurisdiction. Most of the footage had confirmed her account. The confrontation at the gate. The incident with the clutch. The attempted detention outside the tent. But there was a gap. 7:31 p.m. to 7:42 p.m. The 11 minutes when Gage, Wells, Beckford, and Dorian had coordinated outside. Segment corrupted, unable to recover. Data loss consistent with power fluctuation. No evidence of tampering. Case closed. Convenient. Very convenient. The IT department had accepted the explanation. The county investigators had accepted the explanation. Everyone seemed perfectly willing to believe that a random power fluctuation had erased exactly the 11 minutes that mattered most. Marcella did not accept the explanation. But she also could not prove otherwise. Not yet. She pulled up one more document on her computer. This one she had not shared with anyone. This one she kept in an encrypted file, protected by passwords she changed weekly. Denise Carter. Original name, Denise Marie Wallace. Age 34, at time of disappearance. Filed EEOC complaint against Bellehaven Estate in 2019. Complaint withdrawn after threats. Relocated to Phoenix, Arizona, under new identity. Found deceased in motel room 6 months later. Official cause of death. Accidental overdose. Investigation closed. But the investigation was not closed. Not in Marcella's mind. Someone had sent her additional documents 2 weeks after the wedding. Anonymous. Untraceable. A police report from Phoenix that noted several inconsistencies. A toxicology screen that showed drugs Denise had never been prescribed. A witness statement from a motel employee who reported seeing a man in a dark blazer visit Denise's room the night before she died. The man in the dark blazer had never been identified, but the description matched Deputy Sloan Beckford. Marcella stared at the file, at the questions it raised, at the answers that remained just out of reach. There was no proof, no evidence that would hold up in court, just a pattern, a suggestion, a shadow that fell across everything she knew about that night in October. She closed the file, stood up from her desk, walked to the window and looked out at Savannah, spreading beneath her like a map of hidden histories and buried secrets. Denise Carter deserved justice. Real justice. Not the partial, incomplete kind that Beckford and Wells and Lila were experiencing. But real justice took time, took patience, took the kind of relentless attention that most people could not sustain. Marcella could sustain it. She had built her entire career on sustaining it. The wedding was over. The immediate crisis had passed. The system was grinding forward, slowly, imperfectly, in the direction of accountability, but the record remained open, and Marcella Dunbar was not finished yet. If you've made it this far, you're definitely going to want to hear what happens next. Subscribe now and hit that bell. The call came 6 weeks later. Marcella was in her office reviewing appellate briefs when her personal phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown. She answered. "Judge Dunbar." "Judge." The voice was male, familiar, unwelcome. "This is Sloane Beckford." Marcella's hand tightened on the phone. "Deputy Beckford, I'm surprised you're calling." "Not deputy anymore. I resigned last week. Effective immediately." "I heard." She had heard. It had been a small item in the local news, buried beneath stories about holiday shopping and weather forecasts. Chatham County deputy resigns amid ongoing investigation. No details, no explanation. Just another quiet exit from a system designed to protect its own. "I wanted to talk to you," Beckford said. "In person, before I leave town." "Why?" "Because there are things you don't know, things that matter." His voice was different than she remembered, smaller, more tired. "And because I'm not the only one involved, not by a long shot." Marcella was silent for a moment, weighing the risks, calculating the angles. "Where?" "Forsyth Park, the North Fountain. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. Early morning. Public space. Witnesses possible but unlikely at that hour. It was a strange choice for a trap. Too open, too visible. "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't." Beckford laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I've done things that can't be forgiven, I know that. But I'm also the only person who can tell you what really happened to Denise Carter, and who else is involved." The name hung in the air. 6 a.m., Marcella said. "Don't be late." She ended the call. Forsyth Park at dawn was beautiful in a way that made it easy to forget the ugliness that lurked beneath Savannah's gracious surface. Mist hung over the grass, softening the edges of the live oaks, turning the fountain into a ghostly sculpture against the gray sky. Marcella arrived at 5:45 a.m. She walked the perimeter twice, checking sightlines, noting the positions of the few early morning joggers and dog walkers. Her phone was recording in her pocket. A small canister of pepper spray was in her coat. And she had texted her location to 3 different people with instructions to call police if they did not hear from her by 7. Beckford arrived at exactly 6. He looked older than she remembered. Thinner. The confident bearing of law enforcement had been replaced by something hunched and diminished. He sat on the bench beside her without greeting. "Thank you for coming." "Start talking." He took a breath, let it out slowly. "Lila Vance Ashford didn't just hate you because of the Palmetto Shores ruling. She hated you because you represented everything she feared. A black woman with power, with authority, with the ability to make decisions that affected people like her." He paused. "But the plan to destroy you wasn't her idea, not originally." "Whose idea was it?" "A man named Charles Whitfield. He was one of the original owners of Palmetto Shores, lost millions because of your ruling. Died 3 years ago, but before he died, he set up a fund, specifically for anyone willing to take action against the judge who ruined him." Marcella felt ice spread through her veins. A bounty. Essentially, Lila was the executor. She used the money to hire people, to plan operations, to build files on anyone Whitfield blamed for his downfall. Beckford looked at her. "Your file was the biggest. How do you fit into this?" "I was hired muscle, off-duty work that paid 10 times what the department paid. At first it was just security. Keep an eye on certain people, report back." He swallowed. Then it became more. "Denise Carter." Beckford flinched as if struck. "I didn't kill her. I need you to understand that. I didn't touch her. But I was there that night, in Phoenix, at the motel." His voice cracked. "I was supposed to scare her, convince her to stay gone, stay quiet. But someone else came, after I left, Someone who decided scaring wasn't enough. Who? I don't know. I swear to God, I don't know. Lila arranged it separately, compartmentalized everything. I only found out what happened when I saw the news 3 days later. Marcella stared at him, at the man who had tried to arrest her at a wedding, who had intimidated witnesses, who had falsified reports, who might be the closest thing to a witness she would ever have. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm dying. Beckford laughed again, that same humorless sound. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Doctors give me maybe 8 months. He looked at the fountain, at the mist swirling around its base. I spent 20 years in law enforcement. I thought I was one of the good guys. Turns out I was just another tool. He reached into his jacket. Marcella tensed, but he only withdrew an envelope, thick and heavy. This is everything I have. Documents, account numbers, names, communication records going back 6 years. He handed it to her. It's not enough to convict anyone on its own, but combined with whatever else you've gathered, it might be enough to open a real investigation. Marcella took the envelope. It was heavier than it looked. If this is real, why not take it to the FBI yourself? Because I'm complicit. Because I'll be dead before any trial. Because... He stopped, gathered himself. Because I wanted to give it to you. Personally. The woman I tried to destroy. The judge I underestimated. He stood up. I'm leaving Savannah tomorrow, going to spend whatever time I have left with my sister in Montana. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For all of it. He walked away, his footsteps fading into the mist. Marcella sat on the bench, holding the envelope, watching him disappear. Sorry was not enough. Would never be enough. Not for Denise Carter. Not for all the people who had been crushed by Lila's machinery over the years. But information was something. Evidence was something. A thread that might, if pulled carefully enough, unravel the entire tapestry of corruption and cruelty. She opened the envelope and began to read. The documents were explosive. Bank records showing payments from the Whitfield Trust to various individuals, including Beckford, Wells, and several others Marcella did not recognize. Communication logs between Lila and unknown contacts, discussing the project in coded language. A memo, dated 2 months before the wedding, outlining the plan to humiliate the target and listing contingencies for escalation if necessary, and buried at the bottom, a single page that made Marcella's blood run cold. A list of names. 12 names, with dates beside each one. Some of the dates were in the past. 6 were in the future. Denise Carter's name was on the list. The date beside it matched her death. Marcella's name was also on the list. The date beside it was 3 weeks away. She stared at the page, at her own name, typed in plain black letters, marked for something she could only imagine. This was not about revenge anymore. This was not about humiliation or reputation. This was about elimination. Methodical. Scheduled. Corporate. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she had memorized years ago. A direct line to a friend at the FBI who specialized in organized crime. Sarah, it's Marcella Dunbar. Marcella, it's been a while. I need to meet with you, today, and I need to bring something that's going to change your weekend plans. A pause. How serious? Multiple victims. Ongoing conspiracy. At least one confirmed death. And a timeline that suggests more are coming. Another pause. Longer this time. Where and when? My chambers. Noon. Bring whoever handles witness protection, because I have a feeling we're going to need it. She ended the call. Looked at the list one more time. 3 weeks. That was how long she had to dismantle a conspiracy that had been operating for years. 3 weeks to save her own life and possibly others. 3 weeks to bring down Lila Vance Ashford and everyone who protected her. She stood up from the bench. The mist was beginning to lift, revealing the hard edges of the world beneath. There was work to do. The FBI meeting lasted 4 hours. By the end, Marcella had handed over everything: Beckford's documents, Gregory's papers, her own recordings and photographs from the wedding, the communications from her contact who had researched Bellehaven and Denise Carter. Special Agent Sarah Chen reviewed it all with the methodical attention of someone who had built cases against cartels and crime families. "This is substantial," she said finally. "Not airtight, but substantial. Enough for a formal investigation? Enough to open one? Maybe enough to get warrants for additional records." Sarah looked at Marcella. "But you know how these things work. Building a prosecutable case takes time. Months. Maybe years." "I may not have years." Marcella pointed at the list. "My name is on there. 3 weeks from now. We can provide protection, surveillance on your residence and office, armed escort if necessary." "That's not enough." "It's what we can do officially." Marcella leaned back in her chair, thought about the system she had served for 30 years, the delays, the procedures, the careful balancing of evidence and rights that made American justice slow but theoretically fair. And thought about Denise Carter, dead in a motel room, killed by a system that protected its predators. What about unofficially? Sarah's expression shifted, became more guarded. "What do you mean?" "I mean there are things that can be done outside normal channels, information that can be released, pressure that can be applied, ways to accelerate timelines when lives are at stake." "You're talking about leaks." "I'm talking about survival." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her briefcase and withdrew a card. "This is a contact. Investigative journalist. Works for one of the major national outlets. She specializes in exposing corruption among the wealthy and connected." Sarah slid the card across the table. "I'm not suggesting you call her. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just leaving this here." Marcella took the card. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. I'm already way outside my lane." Sarah stood, gathering her files. "But, for what it's worth, I believe you, about all of it. And I'm going to push this case as hard as I can. That's all I can ask." "No." Sarah paused at the door. "You can ask for justice. Whether the system delivers it, that's another question." She left. Marcella sat alone in her chambers, holding a journalist's card in one hand and a death list in the other. The system was moving. Slowly, carefully, the way it always moved. But the clock on the wall was ticking faster. She picked up her phone, dialed the number on the card. The journalist answered on the second ring. "Rachel Okonkwo, Washington Tribune." "Ms. Okonkwo, my name is Marcella Dunbar. I'm a federal judge in Savannah, Georgia, and I have a story that I think you're going to want to hear." The article dropped 2 weeks later. "Savannah elite implicated in pattern of intimidation, corruption, and suspicious death. Federal investigation underway." Rachel Okonkwo had done her homework. The piece was thorough, devastating, and impossible to ignore. It named names, cited documents, included photographs of the key players, and featured on-the-record statements from multiple sources, including Councilwoman Teresa Wynn and a sworn affidavit from Sloan Beckford, submitted just days before his death in a Montana hospice. The reaction was immediate. Lila Vance Ashford's publicist released a statement calling the article a defamatory attack based on unreliable sources and circumstantial evidence. The statement announced that legal action would be taken against the Tribune, the journalist, and anyone who repeated the claims. No legal action was ever filed. Wells Colton resigned from his law firm the day after the article appeared. His partners issued a brief statement expressing surprise and disappointment at the allegations and wishing him well in his future endeavors. Gregory Ashford filed for divorce. Bellehaven Estate closed its doors for renovations that no one expected to ever complete. And the FBI announced that it had opened a formal investigation into the activities of the Whitfield Trust and its beneficiaries. The investigation would take years. Marcella knew that. These things always took years. Witnesses would be interviewed. Documents would be analyzed. Lawyers would file motions and counter-motions and appeals. The machinery of justice would grind forward at its usual glacial pace. But the machinery was moving, and for the first time since that October evening, Marcella felt something that might have been hope. The final document arrived on a Tuesday in January. It was another manila envelope, delivered to her chambers by a courier who asked for a signature and then disappeared without a word. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No letterhead, no signature, just 3 sentences. The list has been terminated. Your name has been removed. Someone is watching. Marcella read it 3 times. Then she walked to her window and looked out at Savannah, gray and cold in the winter light. Someone is watching. It could have been a threat, another warning from another enemy. But somehow, it did not feel like a threat. It felt like a promise. She thought about Edith, the retired attorney from Michigan, who had witnessed everything at that wedding. About Greta, the caterer who had slipped her the napkin with the security server information. About Teresa, who had risked her political career to ask hard questions. About Gregory, who had betrayed his wife to save a stranger. About Marcus, who had finally found his courage when it mattered most. And about Beckford, dying in Montana, who had handed her the key to unraveling everything. The system was broken. Marcella had always known that. It protected the powerful and punished the vulnerable. It moved slowly when speed was needed and rushed when patience was required. It promised justice and delivered compromise. But there were people within the system who still believed, who still fought, who still risked everything for the chance to make things slightly better. She was one of those people, and apparently she was not alone. She returned to her desk, opened her laptop, began reviewing the brief for her 2 o'clock hearing. The wedding was over. The conspiracy was exposed. The justice was partial, incomplete, frustratingly slow. But the record remained open, and Marcella Dunbar would keep fighting until it was closed, or until there was nothing left to fight for. The sun broke through the clouds outside her window, casting a brief shaft of light across her desk. She did not look up. There was work to do. There was always work to do. And somewhere out there, someone was watching. Making sure the watchers were themselves watched. Making sure the powerful knew their power had limits. Making sure that women like Denise Carter, like Marcella Dunbar, like all the unnamed others who had walked into spaces where they were not wanted and refused to leave, would have their stories told, their sacrifices remembered, their justice pursued. The clock on the wall ticked forward, the world kept spinning, and the record remained open, always open, never closed, never forgotten. The end.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. If you found the content helpful, please remember to like and subscribe so you won't miss our upcoming episodes. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. We are always here to listen.